Well, the World Health Organization, WHO, says Africa is far from ready for what will be the continent's largest ever COVID immunization drive. All 47 countries in the WHO African region received the WHO's vaccine readiness assessment tool, which is intended to be used by ministries of health with support from WHO and UNICEF. 40 countries have updated the tool and provided data to WHO. An analyst finds that based on the self-reports by the countries, the African region has an average score of 33% readiness for a COVID-19 vaccine rollout, which is well below the desired benchmark of 80%. Let's cross live now to Washington, D.C., where the WHO envoy on COVID-19 and former Nigerian Finance Minister Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala joins us. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala recently stepped down as the chairperson of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. She's also the front-runner seeking to emerge as the first African and female Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, you're welcome to Newsday. Let's start with Gavi. One of the objectives of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, where you were the immediate past chairperson, is to ensure that immunization programs are financially, as it were, sustainable for equitable distribution of vaccines globally. Now, how does this objective play out in the light of the fact that Africa's access to COVID-19 vaccines right now is far from equitable, with a paucity of finance as the determinant factor?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. As you said, Gavi's mission is to implement immunization programs. Normally, it's for children in developing countries, and the organization has vaccinated 760 million children, thereby saving 13 million lives. But Gavi also is dealing with the issue of the COVID vaccine. And as you noted, there's a scramble right now going on in the world. Countries are bidding for these vaccines, bidding up the price, and that is making supplies very scarce, and it's making it difficult to get vaccines to developing countries. Nevertheless, I have to say that the only global solution that has been put together to solve the issue of equitable access for developing countries is an effort being done by WHO, Gavi, an organization called CEPI, as well as many international leaders. Many countries are members of this. And they've developed a facility called Covax. The Covax facility is supposed to help 92 lower, middle, and low-income countries to access these vaccines in an equitable fashion. So as at now, with the scramble going on, the facility has been able to contract 1.9 billion doses of vaccines for all these countries. And 88 countries have put in a request from all over the world. Of these 88, 42 are African countries. And I think you just spoke about readiness assessment. So in the assessment, 12 of the African countries have said they are ready to receive vaccines now. And I'm happy to say that Nigeria is one of them.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned Covax. Recently, Christine Lagarde on the Reuters Up Next conference mentioned your involvement in that. So could you help us a bit more specifically understand what Gavi and the WHO, which recently appointed you as their envoy on the COVID-19, doing to bridge this gap? Because there's a sense in which Africa is playing catch-up. How many vaccines should we expect to see coming through to Africa through the interventions of Gavi and WHO?
Well, thank you. I know there's a lot of anxiety about getting the vaccines. I just want to mention that worldwide, I think it's just about 46 countries that have started vaccinating their populations. But what we're trying to do is with Kovacs, is to try as quickly as feasible to get vaccines to the continent. Covacs expects that by first quarter of this year, and hopefully starting maybe in late February, actual physical quantities of vaccines will begin to get to those countries that are ready. Remember, I just mentioned that 12 countries have indicated they are ready. And the aim is to send vaccines that will vaccinate 20% of the population, beginning with 20%. And the prioritization is for frontline workers, those who are dealing with the medical issues to be vaccinated first. And then, the rest of the population according to criteria to be agreed by the government. So that is what is being done to try and bridge this gap. Now, of those vaccines, AstraZeneca vaccines, which are, more easy to distribute because they don't require such cold conditions and are good for our country. So we hope to get AstraZeneca. Also looking at Novavax, Johnson & Johnson, as well as Pfizer. So those are the vaccines that are in play right now that are being discussed and contracted for delivery when the time comes.
Let's discuss Gavi more. What can, or what more rather, can Gavi and WHO do in empowering less developed countries, to develop competencies in the research and development of vaccines, not just for COVID, but also other preventable and treatable diseases, looking towards the future?
I think that's a very good question. Now that we have the African continental free trade area, we have a very big and large African market. So I think it's also time for us to start looking on the continent for how we are going to develop more of our own vaccines. At this moment, there is a facility in Senegal, the Institut Pasteur. There is one in South Africa. But we need much better and bigger facilities so we can also begin to manufacture our own vaccines. And then, as you said, to fund research. I think that the African Centers for Disease Control under Professor John Nkengasong is doing a good job in trying to reach out to African countries to see how this can be facilitated. And I also want to say a word for the good work being done by Dr. Faisal Shuaib of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Chike Hekwazu of the Nigerian CDC, and the Ministry of Health. I think they're really making efforts to try to see how Nigeria can also strike out in these areas. But most of all, I want to commend them for the work they're trying to do to get us ready for the vaccines.
Okay, looking ahead and possibly looking to what we could have done to bridge the gap before now, let's talk about universal health coverage goals. And you frequently use the word investment when it comes to health, the health sector development. And you're known to have quoted Nelson Mandela as saying health cannot be a question of income, it's a fundamental human right. So could you make the case for investment in health? Why is it often not seen as sound economics?
Well, I think the opinions are really shifting that investment in health is absolutely sound economics. You saw it with what happened with Ebola in those countries that really, when there was the Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, it decimated the country and really impacted the economy and impacted employment. So it just tells you that if you don't take care of health, you won't have a sound economy. Now take it to this COVID. You saw what happened when the COVID pandemic came with the shutdowns and so on. That immediately impacted the economy. So if you don't invest in health and you're not able to deal with your health issues, it means you're going to have a direct impact on your economy. So it just makes sense to invest.
All right, Doctor, let's shift focus a little bit. Let's move on to the World Trade Organization. You'll be so much interested in this, where with the backing of Nigeria, you've been in pursuit of your quest to become its first African and female Director General. Now, how does it feel to have your destiny as concerns the WTO suspended on the whims of an now outgoing president of the United States of America. Donald Trump, of course.
Well, I want to come back. I don't like the word destiny. That is too heavy. I think WTO is not my destiny, but it's a very challenging international assignment, which obviously is very important to all the countries in the world, the 164 members. And because of the rules they have, that they have to agree everything by consensus. If a country doesn't join the consensus, then sometimes it becomes difficult. And in this case, the United States did not join for reasons that no one can really understand. The majority of the countries, 162 countries, are behind in a consensus behind my candidacy. But let's look forward. We're very hopeful that with the new administration coming in, things will change and we'll begin to finalize this aspect of the DG WTO position.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Has there been any time, just to add, that you had butterflies in your tummy concerning this race?
Oh, it was a very difficult race, I think. You know, it took place over 5 months. And when I started it, I was very honored to be nominated by the country, obviously, and then by the continent. That was a big honor. But I didn't know it would be so grueling. It was a very tough competition over 5 months with different stages. And as old as I am, you know, I've always been taking exams and I've never been afraid of them. But this one was a bit tough. So yes, there were times I had butterflies in my stomach about whether I was going to make it. You know, you're doing this in front of the whole world. So if you fail in front of everyone. If you pass, you pass. So it was a bit tough. But thank God we made it.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I saw you defending your stand, and you seem to be saying you're the best qualified person for the role. Okay, so I guess, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because right now I'm blessed to be working at the intersection of public health and trade. And those are things that are very, very topical now. You saw what happened with trying to get access to COVID diagnostic materials, PPE, and all those equipment to fight COVID. That is trade. And some countries put up export restrictions. You know, and I have also been arguing for vaccines. Some countries are being vaccine nationalists, and we're arguing, look, let's open up trade on these issues. And so having trade work together to make public health improve, I think is a very good thing. So I have those skills. And I thought that one could apply them, you know, to help the world, and particularly to help our continent as well.
Indeed, indeed. And I guess you could say we're not being presumptuous in saying we're more optimistic of your chances of clinching that role now that President-elect Joe Biden is going to be sworn in next Wednesday. And do you see Joe Biden? Go on.
No, I was going to say God has been good. And I've enjoyed so much support from Nigeria, from Nigerians. I'm really very grateful. So we hope that it will work out.
Yes, we look forward to it. So I was going to ask, do you see the Biden administration adopting a more multilateral approach to global trade than his predecessor, who we know favored protectionism and renegotiated bilateral trade deals?
Absolutely. I think that President-elect Biden has declared that he will adopt a more multilateral approach with respect to trade and a multilateral trading system. I don't expect the substance of the issues that the United States has towards trade to change, but the approach to solving those problems, I think, will be more collegial, will be more multilateral, and that could make things easier to resolve at the WTO.
Trump or not, the WTO faces an uncertain future due to the pandemic. China and the emergence of populist right-wing governments in other parts of the world. What measures do you intend to introduce to ensure that the World Trade Body, WTO, is able to address these competing interests?
Well, you make a very good point. I don't think it's so much an uncertain future as the fact that the WTO is one of the most important multilateral organizations in the world. You saw how all countries were scrambling to get their candidates to get this position. It faces strong challenges, but it's very clear that the world leaders feel they need this organization. That's why there's so much interest. And I think what we need to do is tackle those challenges one by one, and have the WTO have some wins so that it can move forward. One of the first will be to see how the WTO and the multilateral trading system can contribute to solving this COVID-19 pandemic through allowing a better trade in medicines, in therapeutics, diagnostics, and vaccines. So that is one area. Also, how trade can contribute to reviving the global economy. So there are very good roles that the WTO can play, and everybody is waiting to see how this organization can better contribute. Also, the WTO has the only trade dispute resolution system in the whole world. It's the only place where countries can go when they have a dispute with each other in trade. That's another reason why every country and every leader is interested. Now, the dispute resolution system has been paralyzed due to disagreements among members. So one of the first things that I would also be looking at is how can we solve the problem so we can revive this system and get it working again. It's often called the jewel in the crown of the WTO. So that would be another important area for us.
Yeah.
So I think solving the WTO's problem systematically will make it much more useful. And as you know, given our continental free trade area now, a functioning WTO will be very useful to the African continent to help buttress our desire to trade more with each other and with the outside world.
Yes, I mean, some may say that you tend to find yourself at the helm of pivotal organizations at crucial moments in time. With that, I just want to find out about your role, your position on the board of Twitter. Why Twitter? You know, some have argued that though you have about 1.4 million followers, you're not one to frequently engage on this platform. So why that choice?
Well, on Twitter, I engage frequently, but I use my Twitter platform very differently. I think for me, it is to share professional information, important information, often related to what I'm doing or to economics. So, yeah, it's true. It's not every single day I'm on Twitter, but I'm on it very often. And I have a large number of followers. But I think Twitter tries to help the public conversation in the world and to give people who don't have voice and give people a means to engage on important issues.
All right, still on Twitter, your alliance with Twitter seems a timely one. What do you make of the growing influence of big tech companies in the political space and their decision, yes, to block President Donald Trump and, of course, some of his associates on their platforms? Many believe this was an infringement on their rights to free speech and a decision that should have been left to government and regulators. I mean, one of the many who spoke up about this was the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel.
Well, being on the Twitter board, I have to respect our rules. And for communications on what is happening, I have to be very honest that we as a board agreed that we have a team that will deal with this to make sure that we have one consonant, one voice. But I can tell you that if you want to know why the decisions were taken, please look at the statement put out by the CEO, Jack Dorsey. I think it tells you all you want to know. Twitter is an organization that has rules under which it operates. And if you read what he put out, you see that things were being implemented according to the rules.
Okay, speaking of rules and regulations, would you welcome some form of regulation of Twitter and their fellow social media providers? Is this inevitable, some would argue, in the light of the developments we're seeing? Some are even talking of a breakup of these firms, a kind of tech demolition to curtail their immense control on data. What do you think? Do you think that should be the way forward?
Let's wait and see. I don't want to prejudge or comment on anything. I know you're trying to get me to go beyond what I'm willing to say, but let's wait and see. These are very difficult times in the world, very uncertain times. We all saw what happened in the United States. So we have to be very careful at this time. We will see what the future will be for the tech companies.
All right, wait and see approach. We'll wait and see, Doctor. Let's still talk on the theme of your affiliations. Let's consider your position on the board of the African Risk Capacity, an agency that specializes in helping member states on the continent in preparing to respond to extreme weather events. Is this the next frontier on which a global war is to be fought?
Well, thank you. I actually just stepped down also from my chairmanship of African Risk Capacity after 6 years. I stepped down on 31st December. But let me say that it's an organization I'm very proud of. And I've been very privileged to chair some of the most interesting organizations in the world. Now, this African Risk Capacity was set up by the African Union to help the continent manage the impact of climate change. As you see, there have been droughts and floods and untoward weather in many countries, impacting on the lives of millions. So climate change is the next frontier, as you noted. I don't know about wars related to climate change. Maybe when it concerns things like water and the scarcity of water that may impact some parts of the world. But definitely, climate change is here to stay, and we have to figure out how our countries will deal with it. It is one of the global commons issues, just like the pandemic, that the world is struggling with. So the fact that Africa has an organization, an sovereign insurance agency, that's what the African Risk Capacity is, where governments pay insurance, and when they have an event like drought or flood, the agency will be able to disburse money to them very fast so they can take care of those who have been impacted. We don't have to wait to go to the world to appeal for donations. This organization can help its members.
Okay, so it's safe to say you're a solutions-oriented person. You come across that way anyway. So a personal goal of yours, which I've read up about, is that you have a commitment to finding private sector solutions to development challenges. How viable is this in a country like Nigeria, say, where, and why haven't such solutions been adopted so far?
Well, I think I said that private sector solutions should be part of the approach to solving development problems, simply because the government alone cannot solve all the problems. And since I've been in government, I've also been in the private sector. I've even founded my own little private organizations. I think I have some experience in saying that we should encourage our young people to become entrepreneurs, and I'm very proud of what many of them are doing. The private sector has been helping to solve problems in Nigeria. Let me just go to small and medium enterprises, because to me, they're the ones that matter most. And you can see all over the country how women are running small businesses, our young people are running small businesses. This is what we need to look at and say, how can we clear the way for them so that they can employ not only themselves, but several others? In most countries, it's the small and medium enterprises that drive the economy. In Germany, for example, even in the United States, it's the same in Nigeria. Then we have our large enterprises, that are producing and manufacturing goods and can also provide good jobs. And I think we should also clear the way so that they can perform in the way they're supposed to. We need more manufacturing jobs. We need to manufacture more of our own goods on the continent. So that's what I mean. Remember, the biggest challenge we have is employment. And you cannot expect the public sector to employ all the people. So we have to encourage the private sector to develop and employ our young people.
I agree with you totally. Before we get back to where we started on the WTO thing, you just mentioned youth now, so let's try to address this particular issue. You advised the youth to use the COVID-19 crisis to unleash their innovation. What were you particularly driving at here?
Well, what I've seen is our young people taking each problem that they encounter and trying to find modern solutions to it. I remember that I said this when I discovered how several young people, not only in Nigeria, but in Senegal, in other African countries, had developed this hand washing machine using discarded drum barrels and other discarded equipment that they used to produce this. And I was intrigued that they could find this kind of solution. You know, in many places, we don't have clean water. We don't have access to places to even wash our hands. So trying to develop such a machine at this time, I thought was very innovative, and I was intrigued. Similarly, some young people have developed apps that can help us monitor what is going on with COVID or get information. And I think that's also good. So when I talk about that, I'm very, very intrigued and very supportive that young people see a problem and they try to apply their minds to find solutions. That's what it's all about, using modern technology and other means.
All right.
Okay, so let's take you back to where we started. What plans do you have up your sleeve for when, or should we, for the sake of formality, say if you become the next DG of the WTO?
Oh, I have a lot of plans to try to turn around and reform this organization, working with the members. It's a membership organization run by the countries, and the WTO DG works with the Secretariat to try and support this. So like I mentioned before, there are a number of important challenges. We need the world trading system to work for us. So it's a privilege to be able to have the opportunity to work with all the member countries, to work with the Secretariat to try to see how we can initiate important negotiations on key issues. For example, there's an ongoing negotiation that is happening now on the digital economy and e-commerce. You know, we have now seen how powerful the digital economy is and will be for the future, and how important e-commerce is. And I know that for us in Nigeria and everywhere, it's going to become more and more important. So it's a form of trade. People are trading on the internet, and the WTO needs to develop rules that underpin this trade to make sure it's fair on all the countries and all the business people participating. So that's one exciting area to look at. I'm also excited about how we can try to help small and medium enterprises and women in trade to break into regional and global value chains so that they can also improve their businesses and their standards of living. We have the area of fisheries. There's ongoing global multilateral negotiations now on fisheries subsidies and how we can make the world fisheries more sustainable for all and clear our oceans of all those plastics and other things that are impeding. That's also, for me, very important. It's part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need to complete those ongoing negotiations now. There's so many areas where there are plans to do things that would be supportive, including how can we support the continent, African continent, and our country to improve its position in the trading system.
All right, before we let you go, you were once foreign minister here in Nigeria. Can we hope that somewhere in your journey, finance minister rather, you will return to the Nigerian political stage, perhaps as the first female president?
You have a lot of questions this morning. I mean, I was foreign and finance minister, and again, very privileged to have been. But you just talked about me going to WTO. So don't you think I should focus on the job at hand?
We're saying somewhere in your journey, maybe coming back, maybe after WTO.
I like international assignments. You know, they are very substantive. They can help my country and help my continent. And I think I should focus on getting through to the WTO now.
We wish you the best. We hope you get it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Ngozi
It's lovely to
Okonjo-Iweala.
see you.
Lovely
Bye-bye.
to see you too.
Thank you.